Welcome to week 7. We're almost at the end of the course, so I encourage you to stay focused and stay strong. Hey, listen, when you download the 3 articles, make sure you have the right ones. There was one that I thought was a little dated, so I substituted a more recent one. The articles that you should be looking for, and I'll give you the name of the first authors: Briones, Lettingham, and Pang. Those are the first name. That's the first name of each of those articles. If you find somewhere in downloaded Kent by mistake, just ignore that one. That one's from 1998, and I thought it was a little bit dated. We have another article from 1998, but it has some good recent information. So I substituted that out. Our course developer will get that corrected for future classes. But I just want to make sure that you have the right articles. So let's dive right in. We'll start with the first one. Again, Briones, Kutch, Liu, and Jen, Keeping Up with the Digital Age. They did a really interesting study. They did in-depth interviews with 40 individuals from the American Red Cross to explore the use of social media in communicating with their key publics. They used qualitative research methods, and again, those in-depth interviews. And they wanted to find out how the American Red Cross employees used that social media to build relationships. The insights were both useful for public relations scholars, but for our purposes, they're more helpful to the professionals, those who use use social media as part of their public relations to build strong, lasting relationships. I'm going to review the 3 research questions. The first one was, how does the American Red Cross use social media to strategically build online relationships with its primary publics? Research question 2, what barriers does the American Red Cross face in using social media to strategically build relationships with its primary publics? And then research question 3, what opportunities are there for the American Red Cross to build relationships with its primary publics through social media? I share those research questions with you because I thought they did a solid job of choosing questions that kind of struck at the heart of the matter in terms of their research. And I thought that they were good questions that you might consider using in your own way for your organization, or perhaps as part of your research, obviously changing them to fit whatever your goals are. You'll find the summation of their research in Table 1. That includes their conclusions. It kind of demonstrates how the Red Cross was able to build relationships through online social media. They did note that the most frequently cited barrier to using social media was resources, specifically time and staff. Now, if any of you are responsible for social media, you can probably relate. It seems like there's barely ever enough time to devote the amount of resources that you want for social media. The important thing to note is that if you're going to go to the effort to have social media, you got to make sure that somebody's updating that information and being responsive on social media, keeping in mind that social media is two-way communication. In many of my jobs, I've been responsible for training leaders in social media and the use of social media, and that's one of the things that I'm very cautious about. Use social media, of course, but be careful that if you dive into that social media pool, that you have the lifeguards there who are going to save your organization from outdated information, or worse, people who are requesting information or providing input or talking about your organization in the social media sphere. You got to be aware of that, and you need to be responsive to that. Okay. The next article is Lettingham and Bruning. This is the 1998 article that you will be reading. It's Relationship Management in Public Relations. It talks about how scholars and practitioners define public relations as relationship management. It's one of the reasons why I went ahead and left this article in there, even though it is a little bit older, because it kind of gets to the crux of that relationship management when the industry was starting to look at public relations in terms of relationship management. They attempted to identify through qualitative research and verify through quantitative research relationship dimensions upon which good organization public relationships are initiated, developed, and maintained. Now notice there, they identified through qualitative research and then verified through quantitative research. That's fairly common. So for those of you who are doing research as part of this course, you will, or as part of this program, you definitely will. But you should also be doing research as well in your own organization. And you might find that there's a good mix between qualitative and quantitative research. Your authors talk about how the scholars, we have the luxury, right, of deliberating the nature of public relations, but practitioners, which I'm also, have to deal with this on a daily basis. And so that's where I like to spend most of my time. What does it matter, right? What are the findings that will help a practitioner engage in more effective public relations? So that's where I encourage you to focus your efforts as well as you're reading these articles. The authors found that the results from their research indicated that the relationship dimensions of openness, involvement, trust, investment, and commitment. Those are the ones that differentiate those respondents who indicated that they would stay current with the provider and would sign up with a new provider, or were undecided as to what they would do. Okay, now I don't want to spoil the research itself, but essentially they used an organization where they asked questions and determined whether or not they would be willing to stay with this provider. And so as they indicated, those things that are true in just about any relationship, including public relationships, right? The trust, the openness, investment, involvement, commitment. Those are the things that you want to focus on as a public relations practitioner. One other note from that article before we move on, the authors also found that research suggests that there's a significant role for public relations within the broader scope of corporate strategic planning. And I thought that was important to note because you're obviously in a strategic communication program, and so strategic planning is a part of that. And we, as public relations practitioners, we play a key part in the broader scope of that. Okay. Our final article this week is Peng, Shin, Liu, and Walter. This is the article that I substituted in. It was originally published in 2016. It reappeared in 2018 in the source that we're going to use. And that's building relationships through dialogic communication. Now, when you hear that word, just think two-way, right? Dialogic, it means going back and forth between two or more people. So think about two-way communication, right? The authors note that numerous organizations use online media for one-way communication. They like to put out information. You'll find this a lot if you do any research on social media or websites or any other online sources. Organizations are pretty good about putting information out. Oftentimes they're not so good about using the feedback they get to listen and make changes as needed. The article draws on two dominant interpersonal theories of computer-mediated communication. One is the social information processing theory, and the other one is the hyper-personal model. They use this to show the two-way communication strategies that organizations can use to improve their online communication. Now, despite their awareness of the importance of online communication in cultivating relationships, many of the people who are involved in online media are not using it to the biggest effect. And one of the reasons is that they are concerned about control or controlling the message. It reminded me back in about 2008, 2009 timeframe, when I was still active duty in the Navy, I led a team that developed the first roadmap for the Navy's use of social media. Now, that roadmap later became the actual instruction that we use, but the important thing that I was reminded of is that we had to get past this, what we called the illusion of control. So, remember, this is 10 years ago, so social media was still relatively new, especially for many organizations and big, complex, bureaucratic organizations like the military especially. And so, military and other bureaucracies like to have control, and so we tried to convince the leaders that control was just an illusion, right? So you can either engage in social media or other people engage about you through social media, but regardless, you don't really control the message. You may be able to control what you put out, of course, but the message itself, how that's received, what other people are saying about your organization, you don't have control over that. And so once you eliminate that illusion of control, it helps bring down one of the many barriers for the use of social media. Okay, one of the questions that your authors discuss is the strategies, or what strategies can organizational practitioners use to engage online in effective conversations with the public? This is a good question you might take and ask for your own organization. You might find that you are surprised by what strategies you could use to engage more effectively online. Another question they ask is, what is in it for organizations to engage in online, dialogic, or two-way communication besides building relationship? This essay, the paper that we're reading, suggests that it can cultivate a sense of belonging with stakeholders. And that's very important. If your stakeholders feel like they belong to that organization, they take pride in that organization, they're going to carry your message in a much more transparent, open, and trustworthy way than anything you could put out. Think about some of the cult followings for Apple or Tesla or Ben & Jerry's ice cream. People love that product, and so they brag about that product. And it's, again, seen a lot more credible when it comes from a customer as opposed to someone within the organization. All right, so that is the update for this week. As I do every week, I'll encourage you to stay ahead with your assignments. Not all of you are doing that very well, so congratulations. Stay engaged in the discussion board. Again, most of you are doing that very, very well, and I appreciate that. And I hope that all of you are enjoying this time of learning.